Hey everyone, and welcome to Brothers-In-Flaw Sports. I'm your host Normie, and I got my co-host over there, Cunado. Uh, so we decided to put this sports channel together. A little bit about me. I normally run a comics YouTube channel, but definitely into sports. Sports was probably my first love, especially football, college football, and so me and my Cunado here decided to start this channel. And Cunada, want to tell yourself, say a little bit about yourself?
Sure, yeah, it's good to see all y'all. Um, yeah, my name is actually Kent. I got the nickname Kenyato several years ago. That's a story for another day. But to keep it simple, Kenyato is Spanish for brother-in-law, which is perfectly fitting for the sports show we decided to do together because Normie here is my literal brother-in-law.
Yep.
So we got Brothers in Flaws. We're going to talk a little bit of sports. Um, and whatever the hell else we feel like. But this episode, I think, going to be sports centric, and then keep it based around that for all episodes.
Yeah. Well, and especially this episode, it's going to be really football heavy, especially college football. Main reason that's just the big thing right now. That's one of my goals with this channel, especially. I know Cunado is more into NBA, NFL, and even baseball. Whereas I haven't been that much into it, but with this channel, especially like I said, one of my goals is to get more into it, watch more, and get more involved into it. But as for today, mainly just doing football. But stay tuned, later episodes. Trust me, we'll get to more stuff.
Yeah,
There's a
absolutely.
lot of stuff ahead.
And just to preface this episode, and for all episodes moving forward, we'd love to hear from you guys. So anything specific you guys might want to hear about, shoot it to us. Me and Normie, we're pretty good at doing some research. We can look it up and see what we can bullshit about at least.
Yeah. We can give our take on it. And if you have anything down below, if you're watching this replay, hit up the comments. And while you're there, please subscribe, give the thumbs up if you like what you're hearing. If you don't like what you're hearing, hey, give the thumbs down. And leave us a comment why. So maybe we can, if we do something bad or something that's just you just don't like, just let us know, and maybe we'll fix that too.
Yeah, we were wide open to criticism, guys.
We are. We are. This is YouTube. We've both done the YouTube thing before, so we know. So starting off, we have the college football playoffs. We had Alabama and Notre Dame, Clemson and Ohio State. I know for me, the Clemson Ohio State was a big surprise, but let's talk about the Alabama Notre Dame first. Wasn't a really big surprise for me. What about you? What do you think?
No, that game it was slightly surprising in that Bama didn't keep their foot on the gas like I thought that they would. They played a pretty conservative game. A lot of that was due to Notre Dame's defense playing pretty well, but I also think Bama got up those 14 points in the first quarter, and it looks like they kind of put it on cruise control. That's just me. Sorry, Notre Dame fans. No shot. That's just what I saw. I have no dog in that fight. But I think that Bama could have hung another 10 to 20 points if they had really wanted to.
Yeah, it really seemed like to me that they definitely did let off the gas. I think they just didn't want to open up their playbook as much. I mean, they didn't want to show all those plays against a good defense because I think Notre Dame probably was one of the better defenses they've seen probably since Georgia.
Yeah.
Because Georgia did have a really good defense, but I think that was one of the things that they just didn't want to open it up to that. And also, well, we'll talk about that later. So Notre Dame wise, uh, is this the final straw with Notre Dame? Do you think, as far as getting into these big games?
It's really tough to tell. Brian Kelly has had them competitive for a decade, and in 2 college football playoffs and before the college football playoffs, national championship. It's just that once they get to that stage, they get run off the field. And I believe I heard today or yesterday he's 1-7 against top 10 opponents.
Wow.
He's got a bad big game record, but he always has a consistently good program. I know that the academic standards of Notre Dame work against him, and I think some of the tradition that Notre Dame is steeped in works against him because there's a little bit of unwillingness to change from a program level. Not him. I think he's an excellent coach, and I think he gives us a really solid product on the field. But it does kind of feel like we've seen the ceiling for him and this Notre Dame team. And I don't know what it would take to break through the ceiling, but I just can't believe that there's more when I haven't seen anything that indicates there might be.
Yeah. And especially, this year actually going through a Power 5 schedule, albeit the ACC, and I actually do want to kind of talk about that later as well. But they did go through that, and I do give them kudos for that because, with the COVID and all these other teams canceling games, they decided to take that big shot and go to the ACC and made it to the ACC championship and beat Clemson the first time around. But like you kind of said, they got to that big game where the ACC championship, and honestly, if they didn't score that late, garbage time touchdown, it's a even worse score.
Yeah.
I kind of felt like that in the Alabama game. It really seemed like because they kicked an onside kick after they scored that last touchdown. I really kind of saw that kind of desperation of we need to make it look close for people who didn't watch this game, so that they won't do what they did in 2012 again, where it was like, no, we're not adding you anymore. So like you said, that those big games, they just I don't know. I really don't think this year they should have made it. I think after the ACC championship when Clemson pretty much just manhandled them, I think that should have been the okay. We're had it been close, I would see that, but I just didn't. I didn't see them earning their spot there.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, for sure. It's this. I mean, since the playoffs have been here, it feels like at least 4 or 5 of the assemblies you have to have 4. It always seems like there's 3, sometimes only 2, but usually 3 teams. It's like, okay, those teams need to get in. Who's going to fill that 4th spot?
Yeah.
This year, you would really be between Oklahoma and A&M. I don't think that it would be fair to A&M, Texas A&M, that is, that they get their one loss at number 1 Alabama held against them more than Oklahoma's loss to Kansas State, which is it's a bad loss.
Yeah.
Even though they came on and are a different team towards the end, so is Texas A&M. I mean, really.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you could take either one of those 2 programs and put them against the Alabama team that I've seen all year, including the playoffs, or that Ohio State team that I specifically saw in the playoffs just now, and I think they would get run as well. So it's just one of those things. You've got to have 4. Just
Yeah.
I would have really liked to see Cincy get a shot, even though based on their performance against Georgia. Well, that's a changed Georgia team as well. JT Daniels has changed that offense. They're a lot more efficient.
Yep.
And Cincy gave that game away at the end. But
yeah, that was. I remember watching that one. I thought Cincy had it throughout the entire game, and then it just Kirby Smart finally got one on some other team.
Yeah,
got that comeback. So he finally knows how it feels like to be Alabama.
mm-hmm.
All right, and so moving on to the next game, the Clemson Ohio State game. What were your thoughts on that one?
Well, like you said to start, I was shocked. From what I had seen of Ohio State going into that, I thought that they were really talented, but not a lot of chemistry. Justin Fields was inconsistent, especially compared to what he looked like last year.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't seem to have any cohesion as a team or as a unit. I think that the Northwestern team that played them underneath 20 for the whole game pretty much in the Big Ten championship, I think that they're good, not elite. So I really thought that Clemson, with Trevor Lawrence and after what they did to Notre Dame, was an elite team, and that we were staring right down the barrel of yet another Clemson Bama championship. I thought that it was inevitable, and then Ohio State put it all together right at the right moment, and it was entirely Ohio State winning and not Clemson losing. I thought Clemson still played a pretty good game. I thought the biggest knock on the game that I saw, the the momentum shift, was Skalski's hit on Fields that he got tossed for targeting, which I didn't like. It was a targeting because he lowered his helmet, he led with his head. It is all the way a target. I'm not. I just wish that he had kept his face mask up, because otherwise it was a clean hit. I mean, he hit with him in the ribs with his shoulder, not his head. It's just that his head happened to be down. And anyway, so it got Skalski, the quarterback of the Clemson defense, tossed at 21-14, I think, with about 6 minutes left in the second quarter. 21 Ohio State up on Clemson 14. Fields only goes out for one play and then comes back in, and it just galvanized the Ohio State team, I felt like, and completely demoralized the Clemson team, losing the captain of their defense and just the gutsy effort that Fields put together after. I mean, he just had a hell of a game start to finish. But, I mean, it would have sawed a normal man in half. And he goes out there and puts together a masterful game. So, yeah, my big takeaway was that Ohio State, they look like if that Ohio State team shows up against Bama, we're going to have a hell of a national championship.
Yep, I completely agree. That I will say one thing, and it will be a knock on Ohio State. They did look like they'd only played 6 games.
Mm-hmm.
They looked really fresh.
Yeah,
but I don't think that really had anything to do with it. I think Clemson had the night that they had that Alabama had against them the last time they faced in the national championship. It's just pretty much everything. They played as hard as they could, but the ball just didn't bounce their way.
Yeah.
And that happens. Or, the team you're playing just happens to have the best game they played ever. And I think you were right about that hit. And if I remember correctly, that was a third down play.
It was.
Yep. It was a third down play. So if that play stands, they're kicking a field goal. They're not if they're in field goal range. Other than that, they're stopping them, and they still have their main middle linebacker in the game. So that was really tough on them. But Ohio State played by far the best game I've ever seen. It was an amazing thing. I was shocked. It seemed like they could do no wrong, except their defense. Their defense looks a little shaky. They did tighten up towards the end, but I think their defensive line really getting to Trevor Lawrence really kind of rattled him, which I hadn't watched much Clemson, but I've never seen a team really get after their quarterback like that.
Well, it reminds me of Virginia Tech a little bit this year, and it reminds me of North Carolina last year.
Yeah.
If Trevor Lawrence gets thrown off of his spot early, it seems like he has a tough time kind of recomposing sometimes. Now, in Ohio State and Clemson last year in the semifinals of the playoffs, he did get shook a little early and seemed like he kind of pulled together and got back on track. And of course, then we know what happened in the championship. But even in that game, Ohio State might should have won. I think Trevor Lawrence is an elite talent, but I don't think that he's used to the pressure. Like you were just saying, you don't see it happen a lot. And I think that that's going to take a lot of getting used to for him.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, once he gets into the NFL, he's going to have pressure a lot. He may have he may be going up against one or two guys that are NFL talent. You get to the NFL, I mean, everybody is that high elite guy.
Just look at Tua Tagovailoa this year in the NFL. He's not getting to throw the ball nearly as quick as what he was used to last year, and he's got a very young, inexperienced for NFL standards offensive line in front of him, and he does not look like the magic man that he was his whole career at Alabama.
Right.
Now, do I think that could change for both of them moving forward? Absolutely. I think they both have all the physical gifts and talent in the world. I'm pulling for them both. They're a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah. And the NFL can always use elite quarterbacks.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So we got through the playoff games. I want to talk about like the ACC. So was this just kind of a down year for the ACC, or is this what you would really expect? You had Notre Dame that was in the ACC, lost one game, and that was the title game to Clemson. Clemson losing one game to Notre Dame, albeit they didn't have their quarterback, they didn't have their middle linebacker on defense that game, things like that. But both of them make the playoffs, and both of them get beat pretty badly.
I thought that the ACC, even during this pandemic year, took steps forward based on what I was seeing on the field, in their inner league play. North Carolina, their offense at times looked borderline, and not just the tier below elite with Sam Howell and how they can move the ball. And then, of course, you had Notre Dame and Clemson. Boston College faltered at the end, but they looked somewhat competitive, even with some early losses. Virginia Tech here and there. Miami all season long, although Miami's schedule was cakewalk compared to even an ACC schedule. It was an easy one. And then when they found competition, real competition, they got put in their place. But then you saw what they did in the bowl games as a league. It was bad. I don't think that the ACC did take any step forward, but I don't know if they took a step backward. I think that this is just the ACC. This is what they've given us, other than Clemson. This is what they've given us for going on a half decade now. With Florida State being completely absent, Louisville was on a bit of a high with Charlie Strong and then Petrino, and now they're non-existent. Scott Satterfield, by the way, in the Louisville program, took big steps backward this year. That was a big disappointment. Their program might be the most disappointing Power 5 program, in my opinion, in the nation. I expected at least a 500 season based on their progress from last year, and I mean that was a tough product to watch sometimes. I think that this is just the ACC, at least for now. This is until somebody starts showing real improvement and winning big games outside of playing each other.
Yeah,
I have no faith in them.
And this year was it'd be a lot harder to judge this year, and because we didn't have that outer conference games, it was all interconference. With I think the ACC, they played their cakewalk. They didn't play really other teams. So this year was kind of harder to judge, especially then when we finally get those games. They just happened to Notre Dame. I didn't expect much, but the Clemson one, it was like, whoa, this is supposed to be your elite team, and you just got manhandled.
Yeah, that was surprising from what I'd seen of them. And then what I'd seen of Ohio State, that was surprising.
But also, Ohio State had a close game with Indiana, and Indiana got beat by Ole Miss. So,
Well,
of course,
Ohio State was handling Indiana early on in that game, and then Indiana started moving the ball and getting pressure on Fields. Fields started to fall apart a little bit, threw a couple of bad picks. And then by the end of that, I think Indiana had the momentum, and it looked like it was their game to lose for a little bit at the very end of that game. So that's how close that was. Some people said that, Ohio State let them back in, and that's true. But and good on them for finishing, closing out, getting the job done in the end. But yeah, no, I agree. I also think Ole Miss is a very dangerous team. There's a lot of dangerous teams in the SEC. A lot. I mean, I would say the ones who took giant step backwards are Vanderbilt and or Mississippi State. Programs that took pretty big step forwards: Ole Miss, Missouri, and Arkansas. Florida State about where I expected them. I mean, they fumbled down the stretch big time, but they're still incredibly talented. They're still a very good team and still this close to making the playoffs. A&M took a big step forward. Auburn took a pretty big step back, but I don't know. I mean, it could have been a lot worse, probably should have been a lot worse. I would say that Auburn's big question mark is moving forward now with the regime change. And then Georgia took a step back, but then on their progress towards the end, and then getting JT Daniels, who by all indications he's going to be there next year. I think they still stay about the top of the East, them in Florida. Jury's out for South Carolina. Obviously, they didn't have a great year, but South Carolina, they pretty much don't have good years right now. So that's that. I'd say South Carolina and Kentucky kind of stayed the same. LSU took a step back. I'm not sold on them being down. I think that they might have gotten hit by some of the off the field stuff, including COVID plus other things, more than most programs. I'm not sold that they can't get right back in the mix next year, but
we'll see. All right. So the big game, a week from today, got Alabama versus Ohio State. What are your thoughts on that one?
Well, I have a lean towards Alabama winning, because as impressed as I was with Ohio State's win this weekend, I saw Ohio State play one excellent game in 7 total games. I haven't seen Alabama play a bad game all year long. They played one game that was definitely below their standards to Ole Miss, and that was really only on one side of the ball. Their offense does not have bad games this year, and that's saying something. First off, playing through the SEC, although all defenses this year look like Big 12 defenses for the most part. I mean, but they, I think, only allowed 5 teams to rush the ball for 100 yards on them, which is going to be a big deal because that seemed to be where Ohio State has found its groove moving forward with Trey Sermon, who is an absolute beast. I'm sad I haven't mentioned him yet. Trey Sermon, Ohio State's offensive line, and the groove they found is impressive. Going into that game, his last 2 games, he was averaging 11 yards a carry against Michigan State and Northwestern. And after this game, I think it still brought him just to 9 yards a carry or so.
Yeah.
They've definitely found something, but I just don't know if that'll be enough. Where Alabama's strong is on the perimeter of their offense, even with Waddle out, and it seems like Waddle might play, even if he's just a decoy. I mean,
before we move on to the Waddle thing, since you brought him up, do you think that is just BS that they're out there just spreading these rumors just to just to scare Ohio State, or do you really think that there is a possibility he'll suit up and be out there?
Um, I I've watched enough Nick Saban in Alabama to where spreading rumors to scare a team isn't their style. Uh, Now, maybe some of the journalists who cover them might come up with something like that, and it might get away from them. But otherwise, I feel like they play that stuff pretty close to the vest. Plus, this fire has had smoke for you and I both know this for 4 to 6 weeks now. Him
Yeah,
legitimately talking about trying to get back for the playoffs and his rehab going phenomenally. And that's well before Alabama was even guaranteed a spot in. So I think there is a legitimate shot he suits up. Now, how effective he is, how many snaps he actually plays, what percent is his actual health, I don't know. And also, there's still a really good chance he doesn't suit up. I mean, if he knows that he's not ready to go and good to go, might be a liability. I think he's the competitor and teammate to sit it out at that
yeah.
point. But I do think it's day to day. I think if he feels ready come Monday, I think he'll play.
All right. Sorry, I interrupted you, but you mentioned Waddle, and I had to ask. But you were talking about Alabama's threat being on the outside on the offense.
Yeah, and you would say Ohio State's strength might be their secondary because they have so much talent back there, but they've looked shaky, including Shaun Wade, who might go in the first round of the NFL draft. He's even looked shaky on the outside this season. And that is not where you want to be shaky against this Alabama team, especially with now the current Heisman Trophy winner running routes against you. And Steve Sarkisian still calling the best game plan of 2020 came in-house from Alabama. But with all that being said, Alabama's defense isn't elite, not like it usually is. Justin Fields is a mobile quarterback, and that's always seemed to give Nick Saban defenses, no matter who's the defensive coordinator, fits. If an elite quarterback or if a mobile quarterback borderline on the elite side of talent has their career day, it seems like that career day happens against Nick Saban, and it happens in a big, upset, gritty type win. And it wouldn't shock me if Ohio State did something like that, especially not after this past weekend and seeing how Justin Fields, I mean, he was 22 of 28, 385 yards and 6 touchdowns against a pretty good Clemson defense. Not great, but pretty good.
Yeah,
And he did over 2.5 quarters of that with bruised, maybe cracked or separated ribs.
yeah, yeah. He had a damn good game. I really feel like this game is going to be decided on which Ohio State team shows up. And are we getting the Ohio State who played Northwestern in the Big Ten championship? Are we getting that Ohio State that played the playoff game against Clemson? And I want to know which one's going to show up. And if that Clemson one team shows up, it's going to be a good game. I think if that team shows up, it'll be a toss up. But I think if they do that, if that team that showed up against Northwestern, they're gonna have a rough night. I think Alabama is capable of keeping Fields in. I think, but like I said, it really depends on which team shows up. I had more, but it just escaped me.
No, I understand. I 100% agree with you. If, like I said, I have a lean that Alabama wins the game. I think it's actually going to be fairly close, at least through 2 or 3 quarters. It might get away at the end. I don't know. I think it's going to be 2 really highly motivated teams.
Mm-hmm.
I think if Ohio State wins, it'll be close because, once again, I can't see anybody stopping Alabama's offense.
Yeah.
I think if Ohio State wins, it would have to come down to who has the ball in their hands last type of situation, and they would have had to been damn near perfect on offense themselves. Otherwise, yes, I could see it easily getting out of hand for Ohio State, and I can't really see it going that way opposite, where Ohio State really gets all over Alabama. Even with the talent they have, Alabama's offense, if Alabama's offense keeps the focus and execution they've had all year long, it's going to be very tough to keep them out of any game.
Yeah. And I remembered what I was going to say. So, Ohio State, they did have a lot of motivation coming into that Clemson game. You got last year with them losing by like a touchdown. You had that infamous fumble. Was it a fumble? Was it not? So you had that close game, and they kept that score in their locker room and their weight room all year. Plus, you have Dabo Swinney, who ranked them at 11th. You had everybody in the country talking about how they've only played 6 games. Why are they involved? And to be honest, I was in that same boat. I still don't feel like they should have been there. I know they beat Clemson, but I don't think they earned their right to be there. But that's another argument for another day.
Yeah.
But, I just don't know if they're going to have that same motivation against Alabama. They've never. I mean, the last time they played Alabama, they beat Alabama handily. So, what is going to be that kind of spark of, we're going to go out here and we're going to get this done. We're going to have this play the same level of intensity as we did against Clemson.
Well, I 100% agree with what you're saying. In fact, I could see this being one of those, emotional letdowns after having gotten themselves so hyped and so amped for the performance they just put on, and then playing their hearts out. Good news is they have a couple extra days than normal.
Yeah,
and I think, and they're also fresher. They've played less games than a regular season, but I think. For what I don't know why I feel like they found their groove. I think they're going to keep that together. You that scenario you've painted could be right. They might not be able to get up for this one, have a bit of an emotional letdown, and play flat and really get manhandled. But on the flip side of that, Alabama all week long is going to be hearing nothing other than how they're favored. They're winning the O-line awards, the Heisman. They're gonna rack up damn near every award, and like just it's the rat poison type game that they're moving towards for Monday. So I could see them starting slow, and I don't think that they'll. I've never seen a Nick Saban team play at the championship level and stay flat, but I can see them starting slow and that being a problem and them having to get back in.
For me, I really don't think they're going to start slow. I know I've watched them all year. My biggest fear and what I've seen with them is they're coming out on the third quarter offense. If I would say one of their things that the offense has kind of struggled with, even though they've been pretty prolific, is coming out after halftime and being kind of flat. And especially some games where it's like, we really need you to keep on that gas pedal. Like in Florida, it seemed like they came out flat third quarter, and with their defense the way it is, and it's not elite, they punted twice, whereas Florida got the ball twice and scored. So I could see that, and I know Ohio State's offense is a lot better than Florida's, and they do definitely have the opportunity to do that and the skill to do that. As if Alabama does come out, kind of they get that early lead, 14-7, 21-7, something like that, and then they come out flat in that third quarter, then that could be a scary situation for them.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I think that the Florida game is much like the Notre Dame game, except for Notre Dame doesn't have the offense that Florida does. I think that they were trying to coast, let the air out of the ball, not show a lot, keep things kind of close to the vest, keep players, uh, I mean, kind of dink and dunk stuff, underneath stuff, real conservative game plan. And then when they had to turn it on, it's same thing with Ole Miss, even to an extent. I mean, yeah, Ole Miss gashed them for 248 rushing yards, so there's a difference there. I mean, that's scary. If Ohio State can get 200 plus rushing yards,
Mhm.
Alabama is in trouble. I don't think that they'll be able to be in control like they were in those Ole Miss and Florida games. But
Yep.
anyway, I think that is kind of what happened with Florida. It's the same game plan that they brought to Notre Dame, but yeah, the defense didn't finish, and yes, the offense punted. I think 4 times total in that game, which is a crazy high amount for an
Yeah.
Alabama offense of this year, which is nuts. But when they needed to turn it back on, they did. But that being said, I can see where it's like benching your players. Not that Alabama's starters went, they played, they competed, but that whole kind of backing things off and
Mhm.
not leaving just everything 100% all game long. I wonder if you don't lose the intensity, but you have to regain it.
Yeah. And that is one of the things. I mean, being an Alabama fan, that is kind of one of the things I fear because too, if they do come out flat third quarter, Ohio State gets some or even gets ahead, then we gotta rely on that defense that just hasn't been very reliable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because like normally Alabama's used to going first quarter 21 points, it's 21-0, 21-3, something like that. And at that point, it's like, okay, they got it. Even if the other team keeps scoring, we can score again.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if we're going to be able to do that in this game. But my final thought on it, it really depends on which Ohio State team shows up and if they are as motivated and if play it at that intensity as they did against Clemson.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think that we've seen enough Alabama be consistently look like the best team in the nation all year long. I mean, even their close games, like I said, they seemed in control. I don't think I think the scores sometimes were closer than the actual games were. Whereas Ohio State looked in real trouble to Indiana and Ohio State and uh, Iowa.
I think so.
Um, there was a few games where Ohio State did not look like an elite team, but if they bring what they brought this past weekend, it will be a very fun game, and I'm very excited to watch. And I
Yeah.
really hope they do. I really hope, amid all these COVID rumors about this game maybe being postponed, or I don't think it would cancel it, but I would rather it be postponed actually, and both teams be healthy.
Yeah. I know they've already scheduled it just in case it is postponed. They have a date afterwards. I know they did that for the playoffs as a whole, like even the semi final games. If they had to be rescheduled, they could have been.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it's gotten to that point just yet. I know ESPN had some story on it, and it's one of those kind of like, why is ESPN having a story about this? But it
Yeah.
was like Nick Saban's daughter had said something about Ohio State was using that to gain more time before the Alabama game. Um, I don't know about that. I think Ohio State wants to go ahead and play this game.
I would think so. I mean, if I was Ohio State personally, I would want to ride the
Mhm.
lightning that they just captured in that bottle. But some of the rumors I've heard in the rumor mill is don't
Yeah.
anybody watching this think that we have any kind of connections. This is a blurb here or there, a Bleacher Report headline that says rumors have, but I saw that maybe a couple of staff members and a couple of defensive line, starting caliber defensive line for Ohio State, might have tested or contact traced to COVID. But so I don't know. That would make me think, if I was Ohio State, I want all hands on deck. But the more time you give Alabama, that's also Waddle coming back. And do you really want to deal with that as well?
Yep. I wouldn't want to. So all right. So we got the championship game. Let's talk Heisman Trophy. So Devonta Smith, Alabama won the Heisman Trophy. First wide receiver to win it since 1991. What are your thoughts on it?
Okay, here's my biggest thought. I'm a dumbass. I wouldn't have taken Devonta Smith at 80-1 like he was preseason, because that would have been pretty ludicrous. Devonta Smith would be splitting receptions with Jalen Waddle and Mechie, and not to mention Najee Harris. I mean, if Devonta Smith was having that kind of year, what kind of year must Mac Jones be having with the other weapons, etc. And he was always part of the four-headed monster that was Judy, Ruggs, Waddle, and Smith. But really the only one who stood out amongst those four was Judy as a complete receiver until this year. Now, with all that being said, Waddle proved that he is every bit the receiver that anyone in the country is. He is incredible. He deserves the win. But 4 weeks ago, you still could have placed a $1 bet and won $22. It was still 22-1. And at that point, 4 weeks ago, I was like, that's the best player in the country right now, and he's only getting better. He picked up steam all year long, including the Arkansas game where he was held to under 100 yards receiving. But don't worry, he's going to go and take a punt to the house just to get his. He's going to get his, and he proved it all year long. I'm really happy for him. He like I said, he just gained steam all year long and just continued to impress more and more. Not just impress, but impress more, including the game against Notre Dame. 135 yards, I think. I've got his numbers here for the season. 105 catches, 1,641 yards, 20 touchdowns, not to mention 9 punt returns, 219 yards, and a touchdown there, and a jet sweep run touchdown. Anyways, what's really impressive is that's 15.6 yards per catch. That's impressive for a guy who's not a deep threat, because he's an everything threat. I mean, he can be a deep threat. He attacks the defenses or the defense at all three levels as good or better than as anyone I've seen do it. Maybe the most comparable to Amari Cooper since watching. At least at the collegiate level, that was the guy who could come in and out of every single route, smooth, fast, sure hands, plus block on the outside. Anywho, I think that the voters made the right decision. I thought that the three quarterbacks and then Najee, who didn't make the trip, finished fifth in voting, all had really good years. Really outstanding years for Mac Jones and Kyle Trask. Trevor Lawrence probably would have been right there without missing the COVID games or games due to COVID for himself. But none of their numbers were as outstanding, and the Heisman Award is the most outstanding player in college football, and that was Devonta Smith this year.
I agree. Devonta Smith was the best player this year. Was he the best player of those four? I don't know, but this year in college football, and that's one of those things with the Heisman, for me, that's what it should always stand for. It's the best player in college that year. It doesn't matter what you did the year before or 2 years before. It's this year. And I really do think he won it this year, and they made the right call. I hope this kind of carries over too, because or I always think that whenever a non-quarterback wins it, but I always think, well, maybe this will start that kind of trend of, okay, let's look at these other these other positions as well. But we'll just see how that goes.
Yeah,
Uh,
just a quick interjection. I don't mean to interrupt you. I 100% agree with you there. I would like to see the most outstanding player win it. Like that, the most outstanding player of that year win it. It shouldn't be a lifetime achievement award, and it shouldn't go to just default a quarterback who's having, and all the ones, everybody who's won it, you can argue that they are deserving of it. Absolutely. But sometimes it seems like it's just going to the quarterback on the best team.
yeah,
And granted, those quarterbacks are having monster years, but there's usually a running back or two, or maybe a guy like Devontae, a wide receiver out there, who deserve more looks than it felt like we were trending towards. I mean, even this year, the only other person invited to the ceremony, or the only other three invited to the ceremony, were quarterbacks. And I would like it to be opened up for discussion and not just be a quarterback award.
yeah. Hopefully this year will change it. But like I said, I've thought that before when Henry won it, when Ingram won it. Okay, we're gonna open it up, but we'll see how it goes moving forward. And
In the year Ingram won it, once again, completely deserving. I'm not taking anything. There's nobody who's won a Heisman who didn't deserve the Heisman, but there was good argument that the most outstanding player in college football that year was Ndamukong Suh.
you're always going to argue that one, aren't you?
I'm going to bring it up.
For those who don't know, we've had our discussion about this before at Christmases and Thanksgivings. Of course, I am biased when it comes to this argument, and so I will. I do understand. Yeah. Cunyato is unbiased, and he's an Auburn fan, and Sue played for Nebraska, was it?
Yes, yeah.
So
Well,
I am biased when it comes to that one.
he didn't finish second. I think second in voting that year was
Colt McCoy, wasn't it?
that's exactly who it was.
Yep. So all right, changing gears a little bit. Going to stay in college football, but college football coaching changes. And speaking of Auburn, Auburn's new coach, Brian Harsin. I know you've said some things to me, but what are your thoughts? Let everybody know what your thoughts are on that one.
Okay, well, even since I've talked to you last, I don't know if my thoughts have changed. I think they've widely stayed the same, but I've gotten more information that makes me think, okay, all right, yes, this is a great hire, and also heard stuff and done a little bit more research and thought, I don't know. I don't know if this is the path to compete for SEC titles, which Auburn actually, out of the SEC West that's not Alabama, right there in the last decade. It's just there's Alabama, and so that's the path you have to move forward on, and that's a difficult one. I mean, Nick Saban has ruined college football for everybody other than, I would say, Dabo Swinney, Ryan Day, and Lincoln Riley. Because a lot of the other coaches, Kirby Smart and Jimbo Fisher, who have success in the SEC, and Dan Mullen, well, guess who you have to play?
Yep.
Guess who you can't beat?
I mean, you got
no one really
Lane,
cares about Pac-12.
yeah, you got Lane Kiffin going to Ole Miss, and then it's I got to play Nick Saban every year. Jimbo, like you said, Jimbo go A&M, but it's like, well, when Jimbo got to A&M, I was talking to my dad. I was like, man, it's gonna be crazy. Alabama's gonna play Jimbo Fisher every year, and then my dad's like, you do realize Jimbo Fisher's got to play Alabama every year. The double-edged sword there.
One of those Watchmen lines when Rorschach goes to prison,
Yeah.
beats the hell out of that guy. It's like, y'all don't realize I'm not trapped in here with you. You're trapped in here with me.
Yeah.
which, as you know, as an Auburn fan, I've experienced that since 2007. I well know. But anywho, uh, my baseline on Harsin is he's been in the coaching game for for 20 years pretty much. I mean, since he was 23 or 24, he's only 44 years old. He's young. Seems like he's got a lot of energy. Uh, since he became a head coach, I actually heard this stat from AJ. I haven't corroborated this yet, so I don't know how factual it is, but just based on looking at his record, I can see where this could be accurate. Since he became a head coach in 2013 when he took over Arkansas State for Gus, he has the third highest win percentage in the country to Nick Saban and Dabo Swinney.
Wow.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
So that's impressive, but he does seem to always find 2 to 3 losses.
Yeah.
I think he's had a 1-loss season at Boise State. He was 7-5 one year, one and done before he moved on from Arkansas State, which is actually a bit of a step down for where Gus had him. And then it's a bunch of just 10-3s and a couple 11-2s. I think, like I said, a 12-1. He just seems to find 2 or 3 losses, and that's at a program in Boise State that is at the top of they are at the top of the food chain of the Mountain West, and even their out of conference schedule for the most part.
Yeah.
That worries me that that's a lateral move. That seemed like a Gus thing. Like when Gus could beat Alabama and Georgia in the same year, ranked number 1 and number 1, you find a way to lose to a semi-mediocre LSU team, and then really don't look competitive against Georgia the next time around. By the time the bowl rolls around and UCF, it was a competitive game. UCF looked like the better team by the end of that game. I mean, or at least they wanted it more.
Yeah.
But so all I feel about for Harsin, I'm excited to see what he does, but I'm not happy or sad. I'm excited to see what he does.
All right.
I'm willing to be open-minded with him moving forward, and also I'd really like to see the staff he starts to put around him.
Yeah. Well, I did hear that Kevin Steele is not staying.
Yeah,
He's
which
gone.
I think that's I think Cole Kubelik reported that Monday. I kind of got that feeling when they hired him, and Jay Gouge, the interim president of Auburn, released a letter, or specifically, I think, sent it to Cole Kubelik, who released it. It's like there was no staff stipulations on any of the other interviewers or people that or interviewees. We didn't have any staff stipulations. There weren't protocols that these coaches would have to go through with the boosters or anything like that. It was just a regular coaching search. Now, that seems like a really good press release, too. So how much of that is truth, I don't know. But it does seem like from all that smoke, the fire is real, that Kevin Steele won't be there. It kind of looks like, from what I'm hearing, it'll basically be entirely new staff, except for just a couple, like 2 or 3. The biggest one on the list that I'm hearing that they might want to keep or actively trying to keep is Carnell Williams, because of his excellent relationship with Tank Bigsby.
Yeah.
And if it takes retaining Carnell as the running back coach to keep Tank Bigsby, you keep Carnell.
Yeah, you definitely do.
Maybe give him a promotion and a pay raise.
Yes.
Because Tank Bigsby is a special kind of player.
Yes. And had he not gotten hurt, I mean, I think he would have been up there. He probably wouldn't have been in, the top 4, but he would have been at least in talks in the Heisman Trophy. I mean, he was that dynamic of a player. Like when he was on the field, I did watch a lot of Auburn this year, more than I've ever watched. And up into the Iron Bowl, I was like, "Holy crap! This guy's good." I don't know if Alabama can contain this guy, and the only reason they did was because he was hurt.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. Auburn would be out of games, and I would start seeing helmets hang and morale go down, and it like the team deflate. Not that cat.
Yeah,
Ran hard and angry. So even if he does transfer, he's got a fan in me for life. But man, it would be really cool to see the new direction with him involved. I would be really pumped about that.
yeah, me too. Except on Iron Bowl week.
Yes.
I don't want him to be hurt. I do want to say that. I want him to be as healthy as possible, but him still have a bad game.
No. We do not wish injuries.
No, no. All right. Next coach, we got Texas, who just hired Steve Sarkisian. What are your thoughts?
In Auburn's coaching search, I had sold myself on a Steve Sarkisian or Lane Kiffin. I had built it up in my head at one point during that whole search that one of those two were the guys I wanted, because I've seen what Sarkisian, like his game plan, like his offensive mind, when it's clicking,
Mm-hmm.
like it was this year with Alabama and last year, how effective and efficient. And same thing with Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin, no matter where he's been, is still widely regarded as one of the best play callers in the nation, college and pro.
Mm-hmm.
So I really talked myself into him. But then once Texas made this hire, fired Tom Herman for Steve Sarkisian. Like, didn't fire Tom Herman to get in the coaching carousel, like in the search and all that. They knew exactly who they wanted after
Yeah.
Urban took them down. Just hearing about his days and then reading about his days at Washington and USC again. Now at USC, he went, I think it was 12 and 2 or 12-3 his very first year, and then it kind of came off the rails. He was 3-2 when his personal stuff got away with him, and then that's when he needed to go to. Well, they politely asked him to leave, I guess.
Yeah.
And he needed to fix himself, go to Nick. But what scared me was his time at Washington. He took over a pretty bad Washington program at the time, but he couldn't get over third in the North in the Pac-12.
Yeah.
Now, USC was better. That was a better USC team and a better Oregon team, and a pretty good. And just talking about the Pac-12 overall, I mean, because obviously USC is in the South. So it was a tougher conference then, but still it was like 7-5, 7-5, 7-5, 7-5. There was no movement. I mean, he was consistently 7-5, but he was consistently 7-5.
Yeah.
Kind of what Tom Herman has been at Texas.
Yeah.
It
He'll
seems like a
he'll be that he'll be that 7-5 and win that one big game.
Yeah.
That it's like, all right, we'll keep you on because you won that one big game you weren't supposed to win.
I will say the difference is he went to the Nick Saban School for Rehabilitating Coaches. And I don't know how many coaches Nick Saban has truly rehabbed, other than Kiffin, because Kirby wasn't a rehab project. Kirby was just coordinator. McElwain, kind of the same thing. And Jimbo as well. Like a lot of the other guys who are just part of his tree aren't the rehab projects. The new ones that you're about to see out there are Butch Jones and Sarkisian. So I'm excited to see both of them. Obviously, Butch Jones is going to have much less pressure.
Yes.
But it
And
does.
I hope he's learned to stop saying these stupid sayings and things like the champions of life and all that.
Oh yeah,
I hope he cuts that out, because that was one of the things where Tennessee was already a laughing stock, and then he would say something stupid like that, and it just made it a hell of a lot worse.
yeah. He had a profound way of putting his foot in his mouth, but like in a non harmful way, other than it just made it a joke.
Yeah,
Trying to say something profound and then it just coming off really cheesy. So yeah, I agree. I hope he's fixed that because he seems like a nice guy. The players absolutely love him everywhere he goes,
yeah,
and it seems like Sark kind of has that as well. The players seem to really love him and respond to him. I think they call him California Cool or California Chill. Like he's just chill, laid back guy. And maybe a lot of his problems at USC and Washington were his personal issues with substance abuse and whatnot.
yeah,
So maybe he straightened that all out, and I'm pulling for him too. I mean, I don't hardly pull against anyone. You have to be a real asshole for me to pull against.
yeah,
And also, like I said, his offense this year and last year have been fun to watch. But I also keep that in mind too, because it it's got to be a little bit easier to call great offenses when you have Tua Tagovailoa, Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, Najee Harris, and Damian Harris. No, not Damian Harris.
Robinson.
Yeah, yeah, all on the same squad, and then the next year, yeah, you lose 2 first-round draft pick wide receivers. And I don't know what Mechie, and I can't think of his name, the other cat who's actually come on, and I actually think
Billingsley.
there it is, Billings. Thank you. I don't know if they're going to be the caliber of the other 4 guys, but they've been really good. Billingsley has really come on, and Mechie is very solid. And then Mac Jones, well, I don't think that he has the physical gifts that Tua has, but his decision making is really good, and his touch and accuracy on fitting into tight windows and throwing it down the field, I think might be better than Tua. Tua got to put a lot of space in those situations, and Mac threads needles.
Yeah, I agree, and it always seems to me between Tua and Mac Jones isn't afraid to take that 5 yards. If it's first down, he'll take that 5-yard pass. 5 easy yards, 2nd and 5. It seemed more Tua was looking for those deep balls, those 10, 15 plus balls every time, and it's like you can't do that every time. I mean, don't get me wrong, Mac Jones gets a lot of those, but a lot of times, though, you got the Heisman Trophy winner Devontae Smith who catches it 5 yards, a 5-yard pass, and then runs it, 15, 20 more yards. So that's what I've seen kind of that difference of, he's more of, okay, this isn't there. You rarely see him throwing it in double coverage.
Mm-hmm.
You rarely see that. It's usually they're wide open if he's throwing that deep ball. If that's not there, he's looking for his other options, even though they might not be these huge, chunks of yard plays.
Yeah, he's a really heady player. But that's what I'm saying though. Back to Sark is that you get to play with the best of the best are your chess pieces when you're at Alabama. Now you're going to Texas, so it's not like you're going to a place that doesn't get talent.
Yeah.
That'll be the biggest battle. Can he recruit at the level of Alabama and Clemson and Ohio State and get at least to the level that Lincoln Riley and Bob Stoops before him has been doing at Oklahoma? I think that if he can get the players in, if he can start recruiting on par with those programs and then bring in the right defensive mind, who Muschamp I think has already turned him down, I think that might be okay. Muschamp's he's an excellent defensive coordinator. I think maybe bringing in something fresh because, Muschamp's already done the Texas thing before.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, not even necessarily young, just somebody with different perspective. Anywho, I think if he can recruit well and surrounds himself with good staff and retains play calling duties, he can have a lot of success at Texas.
I think as far as recruiting wise, I think his biggest thing is keeping recruits in Texas, because the number one state Alabama recruits from, Texas.
Well, Alabama, LSU, Oklahoma, Arkansas.
Yep. And
I mean,
plus you have Texas A&M there as well. You got a smaller school, Baylor, Houston. So, but a lot of those Texas recruits go out of state, and I think if he can recruit those Texas players, he should be good.
Yeah. I mean, if you can keep at least 50% more of those recruits in house, that'll be huge. And those are just some of the programs we've named. I think that when they were talking about Mario Cristobal and his recruiting, because Oregon's not a super hotbed of talent, I think he had 5 or 6 4- and 5-star players from Texas in Oregon.
Yeah.
I mean, it should be easier to talk those guys into staying home.
Yeah, especially at a program
like Texas and a city like Austin. Like, that is a fun city. So it's not like you're trying to talk them to stay in, well, I can't think of boring city, but insert terribly boring college.
Yeah. You're not trying to keep them in Waco.
Yeah, or Pullman, Washington, something like that. I mean, it's Austin. Yeah. It's a thriving hub in and of itself. It's arts and parties and nightlife and anything you want, that city can give to you pretty much.
Yeah. But, all right. So our final coach, we talked about Will Muschamp. So South Carolina was Shane Beamer.
Okay.
Do you know much about Shane Beamer?
I did get a little bit of time to do some look on some looking on this, a little bit of research. And I'd already heard some of these things, but he concerns me a little bit. I don't think that means he's going to be bad, but he spent 10 years as a positional coach with multiple different programs. I actually don't think any of it was with Virginia Tech. If so, it was just a year or two. So not with his father. Now, as far as those positional coaches go, I think he coached running backs and cornerbacks and linebackers and all kinds of
special
positions. He was on special teams a lot. He really seemed to find a niche towards the end of that decade, around 2007 or 8, really got on with special teams. So coached all 3 phases of the ball. He finally got the assistant head coach label with his pops in 2010 until 2015, until Frank Beamer called it quits. But then immediately after that, he goes back to a positional coach and special teams at Georgia. And then I think he did a year there or 2, and then did another year or 2, moved over to Oklahoma, got the assistant head coach title, but didn't coordinate anything. He was still a positional coach / special teams guy. That worries me that he has been around the game for 20 years and has the name Beamer. I mean, that is high pedigree. And has never gotten a coordinating position. I mean, at any level, you wouldn't have gone to a full-time special teams coordinator, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. Now, granted, Dabo Swinney never was a coordinator. And so clearly, in the state of South Carolina, that experiment can and has worked. But it worries me So I would put a big question mark on Shane Beamer so far. But one of the other things that worries me is the age from kicking the tires for so long. He's also, these guys are also young. So we're
Yeah,
going to get to see these guys for a while if they can retain their spots. Big if. But, Harson's 44, Sark's 47, Shane Beamer's 43. But thinking about some of the guys that didn't have Beamer pedigree and had more meteoric rises, including Joe Brady, who I didn't look up his age, but I just thought of a few. Sean McVay is only 33 or 34. Now, granted, he had a lot of breaks to get where he was. Well, not a lot of breaks. He had to impress a lot of people, but
yeah,
he impressed the right people quickly enough. And I think that he came up to the NFL different avenue. It's apples to oranges. But
yeah,
then you've got Ryan Day, also different avenue. Who knows how long he's an OC underneath Urban if Urban doesn't himself call it quits. But also didn't realize that he's only 41. Then Lincoln Riley, same situation with Bob Stoops, and he's only 37. But the one that sticks out to me as far as a guy from pedigree is Kyle Shanahan, and he's only 41. So he's actually even younger than Beamer,
yeah,
and he's already taken teams to the Super Bowl. I'm not saying that there's not a such thing as late bloomers. I absolutely believe there is. I would say Nick Saban would be one. I would say Dabo Swinney, really.
yeah,
But that seems to be more irregular than regular right now.
yeah. My biggest thing is he has been quite the journeyman, and you talked about he's never been a coordinator besides an offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator, and he's never been a head coach anywhere.
Yeah, no.
And now he's a head coach at an SEC school. Now, it's South Carolina, but it's still the SEC.
Yeah.
And I I don't think that bodes well for him. I was looking it up because but there was a coach who was an offensive coordinator before he became the head coach, but he became his first head coach job was an SEC school, and that was Mike Shula. And you remember that.
I remember the foundation he laid for Nick Saban.
The foundation. But I remember the just the little things you pick up from being a head coach. I mean, Malzahn was at Arkansas State. I mean, Nick Saban rose up through the ranks and coached at smaller schools, and it's those little things you pick up as a head coach. And I know for like with Shula, and especially him trying to be the offensive coordinator as well, there were a lot of delay of game penalties. There were a lot of times where he wasn't paying attention, should have called timeout. Big times in games where he just it just like he wasn't there yet. Had he been like a coach at a smaller school first and then kind of rose up, he might have been a little better off. But I I just feel like you learn a lot just even coaching at a smaller school, but being a head coach. And like I said, I know I went through that Mike Shula tenure, and I kind of see this happening at South Carolina.
It definitely could. You bringing up Shula, first off, another guy from pedigree. But he was fairly young still, probably about that same age, around the
Yeah,
40s. And then I thought about Kiffin. But on the flip side of that, I think now the Raiders didn't work out, but I think Kiffin at Tennessee, if he hadn't jumped for USC, which that he wanted to be in the West Coast anyways, like I understand, and USC is probably regarded as a better job. I mean, it's fairly close, but they have more tradition than Tennessee. I
yeah,
think if he stuck around at Tennessee, and Derek Dooley, another guy. Anyway, there's a lot of comparisons to draw for Shane Beamer. But he said the flip side to the coin of somebody who was never an offensive or defensive coordinator who took over a program. Now, granted, he got hired from within, so he already knew the inner machinations. Dabo Swinney has Clemson as now, after having gotten put out of the playoffs, I would say they are solidly right this current second, the second best program. Well, maybe the third, depending on what Ohio State does.
Yeah.
But second or third best program in the nation. And he's never called plays on either side of the ball.
All right.
So maybe I'm pulling
maybe whenever. I mean, I hope he does fine.
Except, for a ball.
Yeah, I mean, I hope he does fine. Just as long as they're not playing Alabama again. But I put him on there because of that. Like, that just kind of stuck out to me that he had never been a head coach before. And then I had looked through his thing, but I didn't catch on to he had never been an OC or a DC either.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's getting a little late. We did have one more topic, but you want to kind of save that for another time?
We absolutely can. Maybe do a double dip this week if we can get one in between now and Friday, and give the folks. We'll just keep that one brief. Do a little brief rundown on the NFL.
Yeah. So we could do that one kind of next time. We have gone on a lot longer than I thought we would, but there's a lot of great conversation. And again, if you're watching the replay, comment down below if you have any questions. Subscribe, give a thumbs up. And like I said at the beginning, if you don't like it, give it a thumbs down and comment and let us know why you didn't like it. And maybe we can fix some things going forward. So, yeah, I think that's about it. And we'll see everybody next time.
See you guys. Y'all have a good one.